Welcome back to the PR Bunker podcast. Today, Caroline McCarthy shares her unique journey from journalism to launching her own consultancy, Raccoon Strategies. She discusses the inspiration behind her company name, her experiences at CNET and Google, and the challenges of transitioning to freelance work. Caroline emphasizes the importance of storytelling in communications, navigating media relations, and the significance of timing in PR. And here's your host, Don Martelli.
What's up, folks? Welcome back down to the bunker. In my business, I have the pleasure of meeting a wide variety of people doing some really cool shit, working in communications and PR, and some mutual connections. Connected with my next guest, who has a really cool name to her company, just launched a new website, doing in this venture. Caroline McCarthy, welcome down to the bunker. Thanks for being a guest today.
Thanks so much, Don. I'm excited.
I mean, the first question I had to ask you when we first met was like, why Raccoon Strategies? I mean, that's so different, so unique. Like, tell me the story.
So first of all, I just love raccoons. I think they're adorable. I follow all the raccoon meme accounts, but I also I think they're very underrated little animals. They have those little hands. They can open doors, they can ruin your house, but more importantly, they're very adaptable. They've shown that they can thrive and live in pretty much any environment. And even though I just sort of I feel a cultural affinity or they're cute, but I also think that when it comes to the companies I work with and the tactics that I implement, I think that adaptability and sort of being able to change and weather the unexpected is something that I very much wanted to connect to. And so I honestly sat around for quite a while as a freelancer, failing to register an LLC and launch a consultancy formally because I didn't know what to call it because I overthink everything. And I was looking at, what are some other words that would echo raccoons, but don't just, call it raccoons. And I looked at the Latin name, which is Procyon, and there's like a hedge fund with that name that would probably sue me. In other languages, it mostly translates to washing bear or washing rat. And I'm like, if I do business internationally, I don't think that's a good idea. So I finally just settled on Raccoon Strategies.
I love it.
But I mean, the short answer is I love raccoons.
Yeah, look, I mean, I love a blue collar mentality. There's a reason why my office is got a white brick wall, and I'm just kind of that black and white kind of guy. And I think once you find your space that you love, who gives a shit what other people think?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool, unique,
Thank you.
People will remember it. They'll remember the
Thank you.
raccoon, right? They might not remember like strategies or anything else around it, but they know it's cute little animals and everything else. But
they're cute little animals that like to fuck shit up.
Yeah, they do. But they're cute doing it, which is kind of annoying, right? So in true fashion, every communications professional that I've ever worked with or met, we never have clean journeys to where we end up, right? So tell the audience here, what is your journey from loving raccoons and following all those crazy memes to actually launching an LLC with the name in it? How'd you get here?
So I started as a journalist. I worked for CNET. I got the job offer when I was 21 years old and still in college. And in retrospect, I'm just like, wow, they were taking a leap of faith there because I went to a college with no journalism program. I pretty much got the job because they sat me in a room, gave me a press release and said, turn this into a news article. And it worked, apparently. And I loved it.
What was the press release, remember?
I completely do not. I think it was intentionally chosen to be as boring as possible. It must have been something about enterprise software or something.
Sure. Some cool company in somewhere nobody knows launched this really cool thing nobody cares about, make it news.
Yeah, exactly. So I worked there for 5 years and I had a blast as a journalist. But at the same time, I saw colleagues get laid off. I saw how unstable the industry was getting. There were, I think, probably a half dozen times where it was down to, you're one of the last two candidates for a role at a more prestigious publication, and I was never the one to get the job. Wow. And so I felt kind of burned out. There's a lot that comes with being a journalist, and in this day and age with how publicly visible you are, your use of social media, how you're expected to use it, but you can't use it the wrong way, et cetera, et cetera. And it was still early enough that publications, and I loved my editors at CNET, but no publication had the systems in place that they do now for maintaining journalist safety, for ensuring that, if they become targeted by people who are, physically threatening them, that the publication stands behind them, that kind of thing. There visibility was definitely kind of freaky sometimes. And so um, I took a job at Google, actually, working on a content marketing project that was very early in those sorts of content marketing projects, when back in the day when, like, if you were a big company and you launched a content initiative, it was newsworthy just in and of itself. And worked at Google for a couple of years. I actually helped with the Google Plus product, which, throwback.
I used to love Google Plus. It was
Oh
great.
yeah. Yeah,
It
it
really
was
I love that thing.
I like, a lot of the bones are still in place and are still, like, Google Hangouts is now
Yeah.
the voice chat, Google Meet, things
Yeah.
like that. So great experience. The company was definitely, I was like, I would not have left journalism sooner, but I got the feeling that when I joined there, and I joined in 2011, that there were people who had been there just, 18 months prior, when the company was still very, very different. And I felt like I joined when it was just getting a little too big, and that I wasn't really finding my footing. There's a lot, company really thrives on a lot of internal chaos and, switching projects. And this is actually something where, like, as a journalist, we would write these stories that were like, oh my God, Google shut another product down. What's going on? Is the company failing? That's all intentional. At Google, they will, like, launch a lot of products that are really just tests, and if it's not working, they shut it down. That's just accepted. And that was something that I didn't understand until I got there. But there was a little too much of that for the way that I wanted to work, and I wanted to build something and be part of it, rather than pop in for 4 weeks and get one initiative done and then move on to another one and never know how the first project even went.
Sure.
If that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I left Google. I freelanced for a little while. I was not really, I think, like, mature enough to freelance sustainably. I did not launch an LLC. I wasn't very good at acquiring new business while simultaneously working on existing projects. And so I had a huge project that took me to, like, multiple countries and things like that. And then that ended, and I was like, oh, whoa, I guess I need a new client. And I was still pretty young, and I don't think it was the right time in my life to do that. So anyway, I joined a startup, an ad tech startup that was called TrueX.
Okay.
I knew the founder because we'd been on a New York Marathon team together. And so, if you run 26 miles, or he was much faster than me, so we did not run those 26 miles together. But if you train alongside someone, what their dedication, their commitment is like. I think you get a better idea of what they would be like to work with. And so I worked there for quite some time. We were acquired. We were under 21st Century Fox. And then we were acquired again because a lot of their assets were sold to Disney. And then we were spun out and rebranded as Infillion. And I was there until, unfortunately, I got laid off 6 months ago. And it was kind of the kick in the pants that I needed, because I had been there for so long that I did not feel qualified to work anywhere else. I wasn't even applying, even though, my skill set was really not relevant for them in that phase of the company. And it was not the best fit for me. But I was afraid to leave. And I honestly needed to, just kind of be shoved out the door. And so I initially was like, okay, I've got to find a full-time job fast. But unfortunately, I live 2 hours outside of New York City. Every company is now saying, or not every company, but most of them are now saying, like, can you be in the office 3-4 days a week? And I'm like, I can't. Or rather, I could, but yeah, my quality of life would suck.
Yeah.
2 hours each way.
Yeah.
Even if I do an overnight here and there, like, what's going to get cut is my workouts and my time with my family. And I value those. So it was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to try to strike out on my own. And 6 months in, it's shockingly going really well. I have also, to my own surprise, so far, not made the same mistakes I did the last time I was freelancing. I made it official as of January 1st that I operate as Raccoon Strategies. And what I do is, and I'm tempted to, like, use the royal we, because it's like an LLC. I'm like, should I say we?
Yeah, because
I don't have any employees yet, but
who knows, right? That's good.
Yeah,
That's what a good communicator does.
I do have three cats. They could be my assistants,
Perfect. Perfect.
but they but anyway, so what I do, the way that I like to say is that I do narrative focused marketing for growth stage tech companies, especially if they're finding themselves in a time of transition. If they have to raise a round of funding, if they have to suddenly pivot the company because, AI,
Mm-hmm.
or if they are just looking to get a story told and realizing that they can't just say, all right, let's do content marketing. You have to think about live content. You have to think about, what's in your pitch deck. You have to think about awards. And so sometimes I will work with companies that don't have any marketing. Sometimes I'll work with companies that have marketing, but there's one thing that their in-house marketing can't do. Awards is a very common one.
Mm-hmm.
When I was at Truex and Infileon, I got very good at figuring out the awards and recognition calendar, which award requires which submission. I'd become a judge for a bunch of awards, which gives you
Nice.
insight into what they want to see and what they don't. And so that's something that I end up doing on kind of an ad hoc basis when there's something that needs to be submitted. But yeah, I love the companies I'm working with. I'm working with companies in self-driving cars, quantum, kind of very nerdy B2B stuff, and it's great. It's challenging, but it's great.
What I love about what if you think about what you just described, right? There's this stitching that kind of just happens, right?
Yes.
Journalists covering tech, right? Then you start working in technology. You had the Google experience. You're doing what you're doing now, and so again, I always say that as a this as a former journalist, you go into a story because you got a pitch or a press release, but it's not until you start talking to the players and the folks involved in the story that it starts to become a little more evident that what you're going to be covering is what you're going to be covering, right? And
Right.
the story is going to have a life of its own. It's your job to kind of nurture it in a way that allows you to tell it in an objective way. And I think that our careers as communicators kind of happen the same way. Like I didn't, when I woke up, when I was in high school going to college and I'm thinking I'm going to be a journalist, I kind of fell into it. And it's really
Yeah,
been a
same.
catalyst for me ever since. So I love that. And so let me ask you this, as somebody who kind of has this stitched together career and somebody who was getting press releases, writing stories, and kind of had that journalism experience, how would you respond to this? I feel like as communicators, we've become kind of like real live and like human LLMs, meaning we're the orchestrators of the narrative for companies. And it just, our outputs happen to be marketing content, public relations, pitching stories, and so on and so forth. But it sounds like you're kind of positioned Raccoon to be sort of that orchestra, somebody at the front of the orchestra to lead and coordinate and generate the story and content, but also have the ability to see the field, right, and
Yeah.
see the story and they leverage that. So I'd love to kind of have you
Yeah.
react to that.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'll give an example. I have a client that puts out a lot of content, and the content that they release is not for a press audience. It's I'll leave the client anonymous just so that
Of course,
I don't give too much away, but they put out a lot
of
of
course.
content. And sometimes they do a lot of research. They'll put out content that is newsworthy on its own. And the challenge for me is that the intended audience for this research content is not the press. But the press is going to cover it. And what I have to work on with my client is the fact that we are in some ways finding two different ways to tell the story, one for their audience and one for the media.
Mm,
And as we were working on finalizing this, the full-time team at my client was saying, oh, well, this is the most important part of this, and this is what we should play up. And I was like, no, well, yes. However, while that is the most important part of this research for ongoing work with your clients, because they're a B2B company, the press is going to latch on to this one very particular part of the research. The intended audience is going to think is the least important part of it, but it is the most press worthy.
yeah, yeah, it
So
is.
finding that angle in storytelling is sometimes challenging. I think that and having worked as a journalist myself, I think that gives me a lot more confidence in being able to give them that recommendation and say, you're going to get on calls with potential clients who want to, buy your data. Great, they're going to ask you about X, Y, and Z, but the press is going to ask you about A, B, and C. And you have to be ready for that, even though from a pure data standpoint, that's not the most interesting part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a unique skill. I mean, I think if you come from the newsroom, you know what news is, and it just And there's no 1+1 × 3 underscore this affinity of y of a fraction of that equals news. It's a gut reaction, and I've tried to
It
describe
really,
this. I try to describe it, and it's so like you get it, I get it, but like you talk to your average marketer who's working in email or SEO,
oh yeah.
they're like, the press would love this. Well, that's because you got these blinders
Yeah. Oh
on.
my God. I was literally just thinking about that exact phenomenon earlier today, which is that I have had clients and this is more none of my current clients. This is a past anecdote, as well as when I was in-house working in ad tech. If you have been working on something, insular full time for so long, you can really get a misconception of its own newsworthiness. And so the last time I was doing freelance comms and marketing, I had a client who just wanted me to be pitching him everywhere. And I was like, well, you have to be able to talk about news. You have to be able to talk about who your clients are. Because this was a B2B client, or that my client was B2B. Their clients were startups. And I was like, you have to be able to talk about who your clients are. You have to be able to talk about your growth. And he just didn't want to give any detail. And I was like, you're not newsworthy. I mean, you are, but you're not willing to be forward enough with that. And he just could not wrap his head around that, and we stopped working together. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I get in the habit these days when if it's depending on what I'm pitching, I'm at the point where I think we have to be brutally honest with our clients and say,
we
look,
really, really do.
if you've cured cancer, it's going to sell itself, right? If you've developed a technology that slows down, the after effects of cancer treatments like no other process or procedure has, great. If you created some pill that takes care of weight loss, it's already been covered, right? So we have to stay on top of the news for our clients in their spaces, but also other stuff happening. Like just in the last 24, 40 hours, depending on when you're watching this podcast, you've had folks like Jesse Jackson pass away, Robert Duvall, right? These in it doesn't those two folks passing have nothing to do with what drives my business, but it drives what the media pays attention to. And with the fact that there's so little of them now, and there's
Yeah.
so much going on in the world, and the fact that there's other information coming in from other sources, Substacks, TikToks,
But yeah,
podcasts, we are at the dam trying to hold this thing up. And so your insight about having that innate ability to describe what is news and what is not news, which is why I think goes back to my question of how we orchestrate other outputs, because it's not just about media all the time. It's just about other content in other forms, whether it be presentations, email marketing, social media.
hmm
So but it's also kind of the reason why we still chase the work, because I think as former journalists, we love
yeah.
chasing the story, right?
No, absolutely. I can give you a more concrete example. Very
Yeah,
recently, just last
yeah,
month.
far away.
So I work with a company called Obi, and
Okay.
they are a consumer app for aggregating rideshare prices. And then they have a data product. Yeah, they're great. So like where I live in the suburbs, sometimes Uber or Lyft can be 3 times as expensive as the other. Like sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other. And so the Obi app will give me the price comparison in real time, so I don't have to open 2 apps because otherwise I would have to. But anyway, as a result, because they have a million users all over the world, they get a lot of data. And their data reports specifically on robotaxi rideshare have gotten a ton of interest among journalists, but also among analysts who track companies like Tesla or like any automaker or tech company that has a self-driving
Got it.
car division. So last month, we launched a report that was the world's first report about Tesla robotaxis and how they fit in specifically in San Francisco. And we were timing it to be able to release it at a conference that was about autonomous vehicles in San Francisco. Perfect timing. Great. We realized like maybe 2 weeks before the report that we were planning to release it the same day that Tesla's earnings came out.
Ooh.
And yeah. And so and OB's CEO, Ashwini, is also a former journalist. And so she knows that, this is a big deal. Reporters
Yep.
who cover this beat are going to be really occupied, especially if Elon says something weird. And so we were like, okay, well, we're going to release it the day before and hope that that doesn't cost us coverage. And what's interesting is that initially, and this was my first time doing an announcement with them. So I was reaching out to the reporters at pretty much every prestigious publication who cover autonomous vehicles. And sometimes that's the reporter who covers Tesla. Sometimes that's the reporter who covers AI. Like it's kind of all over the place in terms of what their background is. So I'm reaching out to all of them, and I'm not getting, I was getting, a few bites, not too many. But then Then Elon gets on stage in Davos and starts talking about Tesla robotaxis. And suddenly these reporters get back to me. And I'm like, okay, so this timing, there was both an advantage and a disadvantage to this timing. It did cost us some coverage because there were some reporters who had to be so completely dedicated to not just those earnings, but like other companies' earnings were coming out the same week. But we got interest that we wouldn't have. And a lot of it had to do with, I mean, like, Elon goes on stage and says whatever. He's pretty unpredictable.
Yep.
And so then suddenly, we had to go back to our list of questions we expected reporters might ask. We had to anticipate that there was going to be much more of an angle on, like Tesla's future and how much they're banking on these robotaxis. Because in this talk in Davos, Elon was basically saying like, this is the future, blah, blah, blah. We're really weighing on this heavily. And so it was a learning experience for me, first in that I really have to keep better track of earnings again, because working in ad tech, even when it comes to being on the PR side, you don't have to care about earnings all that much because, the agencies that are publicly traded will just have another bad quarter, and it's like whatever.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
but that was a very good learning experience for me, but also looking at, you have to pay attention to the news. You have to know what's going to cost you coverage, what might gain you coverage, what might cost you some coverage but gain you other coverage.
Yeah, and even as you're doing the assessment, you could be an hour or two away from the moment in time and something happens, right?
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like even then, if say nothing happens, your
Mm-hmm.
event or your press release, your pitching goes out without a hitch, reporters do interviews and blah blah blah, and then from the time the reporter hangs up the Zoom or puts the pencil down and so on and so forth, the worst part of the entire experience for me is waiting for the article or the segment to run, because there's sometimes where the interviews happen and the piece never runs.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
And so the
No,
client's
and
like,
that's something.
article day,
Yeah.
and like, oh no, something else happened. Like there's so much uncertainty and volatility in that process. It just drives me nuts. But that's just part of what we chase.
Yeah, and I also, something I learned as a journalist was that there's sometimes a journalist will do an interview with you without any intention of covering the story, but there is a reason for them to do it. I remember very early in my journalism career, I got pitched by a startup, and I was like, I don't have time to do this, whatever. But a colleague of mine who covered Google took the pitch, which was fascinating, because I was like, well, why were you interested in this? Because the founder used to work for Google and she wanted some anecdotes from him for a story she was working on that was about Google. And I wasn't sitting on that call, so I'm not 100% sure whether, she brought that up with him. But at the same time, I definitely, with my clients, I have to say, this may not turn into anything. This may turn into something down the road. Even if they say they will not publish a story, but they're willing to talk to you, take the call, because then they've gotten FaceTime with you.
Yeah,
it is worth your time. I have also had clients sometimes push back on like the reach of a particular news outlet, and they're like, is this one worth my time? And I'm like, of course it is worth your time, because even though it's small, it's reputable. If it's not reputable, totally different story. But also, if there's a smaller news outlet and there's a reporter at that news outlet who I know is extremely good at what they do, that reporter is going to work somewhere else someday. And if they are on a first name basis with you, that makes all the difference.
You alluded to it. There's a couple things. You take the call from the reporter if they just want to have a conversation with you, because it's networking, you're building a relationship. And frankly,
absolutely,
my connections in the media, calling my clients directly, great. That means I did my job. I made the connection. The reporter feels comfortable with this particular person being a source, and they call you regularly, you take the phone call.
Absolutely.
Now, if they're calling you with something that's a little scratchy, you might want to say, let me call you back, and then you call me and we figure it out. But if they see you as somebody on their short stack of a source, you play into that bad boy. You leverage that relationship as much as you possibly
absolutely
can. So good stuff. So let's do this. I'd love to. I heard a little bit about you running and athletic, right? So in all your free time, when you're not working on clients, chasing reporters, trying to get coverage, what are some of your kind of good habits you've built as a communication professional, things you're doing personally? What else drives you to do what you do and fuels kind of the raccoon that's outside kind of getting you trapped? What feeds the raccoon? What about you on a personal level?
Well, I definitely need to, there is the amount of, so I track my metrics pretty obsessively. I have a Whoop
Okay.
tracker, I have an Apple Watch.
Nice.
And what's really interesting is the extent to which I could see physical changes in my fitness and sleep and stress metrics going from a full-time job to running my own operation. I don't know, have you seen the same thing?
I mean, the worries are always there, but
Yeah,
they just change with the day from time to time. But you're
yeah,
absolutely right, where you're like, it's this
yeah,
all day
no,
long.
absolutely. And so I have just had to, I will, so actually like today, one of my friends texted me and said, "Hey, can you give me a call? I think I might have a lead for you on a new client." I'm like, "Great, I will call you." But my only free window is my, like right now is my workout window, and that is sacred.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
um,
respect that.
I do not subscribe to, I mean, I was an athlete in college. I was a rower. It's a very intense sport. I know you're in Boston. It's like the only city where people actually know about rowing.
Yeah,
And then Philly.
the Charles River. I mean, that event every year. It's like I don't know,
Oh my God, it's my favorite.
fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah, I've rode in the alumni boats there. Not as much fun because we're
cool,
old and out of shape.
very cool.
But
Yeah,
anyway,
if you
so
ever been to Boston during that event, it's the quintess. I mean, it doesn't even happen in Boston. It happens in Cambridge, by the way, where I grew up. But that whole environment, it's just very collegial. Get to meet a bunch of people, super competitive, and these athletes are just incredible work. And the speed to which they're going on the water, damn,
oh yeah,
it's
it's insane.
like it's crazy, but it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, keep going.
But anyway, so so just to, that was just to preface, my background as an athlete. I do not subscribe to the philosophy of those workouts where it's like, hey, full body workout, 20 minutes a day, like cram it in. That is not what I need, and that is not beneficial for me. I
Mm-hmm.
need 60 minutes. You like
Mm-hmm.
I will ride my Peloton. I will even just go for a walk, but I need that block of time where I am not working and where I'm getting away from you know, my inbox and my text messages and my
Yeah,
Slacks and just getting to really, they call it now, the term for it now is zone 2 cardio. We call it steady state in rowing. It's just like that long endurance
yeah,
that is
yeah.
just so
All day
good for
endurance.
you. And then helps me, for me, it helps me reset so that
Yeah,
I can get back to work after that. I don't crash in the afternoon. It's just
I hear you.
much that is I will make sure that there is a free hour every day for that.
Literally, after this recording is over, I've got a 45-minute power zone max ride scheduled, ready to go.
Which
All I do,
instructor?
I'm a big Wilpers,
Yeah,
great, Ben's good. I mean, they're all good.
yeah. No, I'm a power zone. I actually literally right before this, I did a 60-minute
Love
endurance
it.
ride with Charlotte, who teaches in
No,
German. I don't
great.
speak
Great.
German.
Neither do I. Yeah,
Yeah, but
neither do I.
her music
Some,
selections are the best.
in my similar story. I mean, I'm 6'2" and two and change. I'm a kind of a big guy, and at my heaviest I was 3+. And I started walking, got a dog, started walking the dog, then bought the Peloton. And I stumbled upon Power Zone training mostly because it reminded me of like weight training. It's regimented. It's you build and you grind. You can take the same ride 5 times over, and it always pushes you because your zones change. And the fact that you can do a 6-week program, by the time you're done with your 6 weeks, your wattage has increased, and you can retest and literally do the
Yeah,
same exact thing again. And you're kicking yourself in the ass every single time. But to your point, I get off these rides and I'm like, I want to run through a brick wall. I'm like, I'm ready to go. I can go another 10 hours. I'm
oh
fantastic.
yeah,
So, but I think what I love about kind of power zone training, I talk about all the time, is that the you're fighting against yourself. And that's the only thing you can control is the effort you put into it, because all this other stuff is happening is very analogous to what we do for work. You can only control your strategy, your focus, your knowledge of the media, what can get coverage, but there's other shit that happens outside. You just got to deal with it and just ride in zone 4 from 3 minutes just to kind of
yeah.
grind through it and hope to get at the
And
end. But
and
very much,
what I like about Power Zone rides is that, and for listeners who don't know, the Power Zone rides, they tell you to stay in these sort of like personalized output zones.
1 through 7, 1 through
Yeah,
7.
1 through 7. If I am not doing a Power Zone ride, I will sometimes overdo it. And
Yeah,
I will go too hard to try to beat a score and I will burn myself out.
yeah,
But what I like about Power Zone is it's like you might have more energy than it tells you to use for the ride, but you're not getting what you could out of the ride. It's kind of like it's almost like that work smarter, not harder philosophy
Yeah,
applied to
yeah.
fitness.
I bet you there's a ton of us PR comms people out there that are just grinding through Power Zone rides and Max rides just to get the crap that's in our head out of it and just sweat it
Oh my
out for
God, it
4
helps so much. Although I gotta say, I was in the recovery zones on today's ride. I was
Nice.
checking email, and I kind of feel bad about that, but
Yeah. All
sometimes it
right.
happens.
Oh, good. Hey, look, that's what that's why it's called a recovery zone. You can ride all day there. You can
Exactly.
juggle, you can knit a sweater, you can do whatever you want in those zones.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So before we get to the end here and wrap up, like clearly you just stepped on the dance floor, launched your business, got the website up and running, which we'll get to in a second. What do you think is next for Raccoon Strategies?
Well, let me think about that. What's next? I have a great roster of clients right now, and I'm really, really excited for what some of them have in the works. I'm going to be in Miami next week. One of my clients' CEOs is speaking on a podcast at a live taping, and then the one thing that I'm kind of gearing myself up for, and again back to the power zone philosophy, making sure that I don't overdo myself, is that the submission window for Fast Company's Most Innovative Companies opens in a couple months. And the last time Fast Company had an award submission coming out, I had a couple of last minute clients that were just for a one-off being like, hey, can you submit this for us? So
Mm-hmm.
I know that's going to be when
Right.
the window for a big award like that is open. I know that's going to be a little crazy. I think I'm going to be working on 3 or 4 submissions already, and then whatever else comes in, because that's one that I've won multiple times. So I can be a proven value add versus just saying I can be a value add.
I mean,
So
they
that's
say it in
a
our business. There's never a loss of things to do when you're in
I
communications. There's always a
know.
story to
Yeah.
pitch, an award to do. I mean, always something to
Yeah.
do.
And I definitely I have to keep myself from getting a little overexcited with those sorts of things. That, even if it's a quick buck, I would rather do a really good job for the clients I have
Yeah.
versus take on another one. And I actually just turned down a client recently because it would have been a very small engagement. And I'm like, I don't want to subconsciously devalue you. I don't want to feel like I'm half-assing it just because your budget is smaller and the scope would be smaller.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, I want to do a really incredible job for the clients that I have. That's not to say I'm not open to new ones, because I definitely am, especially since I have one temporary engagement ending in April. But it's the kind of thing where keeping yourself in check, knowing your own limits, and knowing that you are in it for the long haul is something that I've learned that you really have to, when you're independent, when you're running an agency, you have to be able to monitor that. And I think that that's actually
Oh yeah.
something that's a little different from when I was working as a journalist, because when you're a journalist, when there's news, and if there's more news, there's more news. And I found myself, I'm just like, yes, 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 I'll cover this. I remember in I think it was like 2009 at it was the Web 2.0 summit at the Palace Hotel in San Francisco. I filed 9 stories that day.
Wow.
Were they good? I don't remember,
Wow.
but it's the kind of thing where I think, and I think things have changed a little bit. I think the late 2000s, early 2010s, there was a push for volume with journalism that you don't see anymore.
Yeah.
But
Valid.
long story short, I didn't learn the lesson about moderation in my professional work then, and I've really had to apply it now.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, with everything, it's time management. It's the projects you take on, the ones you want to do versus the ones you'd like to get that are revenue heavy, that sort of stuff. So just
Yeah,
that's the balance of us as solopreneurs, especially in communications, where we have a seat at the table, right? We're talking to folks that are executives, co-founders who are worried about driving growth and revenue, and they rely on us to do a million things, oftentimes that are either in scope or out of scope, but we're at the table for a reason. So it's good stuff. So one, congratulations on launching the company. Glad
thank you.
burned the boat, right? You set that boat off, send that W-2 around. Now you're on the island doing your thing like the rest of us. But what's your networking platform of choice? And then where can people find you in that, as well as what's your website address?
So my networking platform of choice right now is Instagram,
Okay.
where I am posting a combination of hot takes about AI, videos of my cats, and sometimes I do sometimes do the occasional like creator work, because what's weird is, so this, I'm just gonna go off on a little tangent here.
Yeah.
I
Fire away.
have a I have big followings on social platforms that are a legacy from when I was a journalist, but I kind of just like let them lie fallow.
No way.
And then, now that I'm independent again, I'm like, well, first of all, I should be using this for business development. Second of all, I work in comms and marketing. It's a really bad look that I have 25,000 followers and no engagement. So about a month after I went independent, I signed up for a creator platform, and so I do a bunch of product tests and stuff like that. My favorite sector is the non-alcoholic beverage sector, but yeah. So and for me, that's mostly, I mean, seeing what the tactics are that are good for social media engagement today. It's been a phenomenal learning experience. But anyway, other reason why I say, find me on Instagram is because I have a really short username from being a beta tester back when they were launching. So it's just first half of my first name, Caro, Caro. And then if anybody who's listening wants to get in touch about working together or anything like that, I do now operate raccoonstrategies.com. There are 2 C's in raccoon. Just a reminder, this is why I almost didn't pick this name for my company.
Love it.
And pretty much all that it consists of is a small amount of text and a way to email me. I'll put something there eventually. Yeah.
We are in a world that is 3 minutes or 30 seconds away from our next distraction, right? So
exactly.
That's what we're all about, right? How to get a hold of you, what you do for work. That's good stuff. So Caroline, thanks for joining the PR Bunker. It's been a good conversation. Congratulations on the launch of the company.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. When you said yes to this interview before I had the website, so thank you for having faith in me.
As I could, but now that I can find you on the leaderboard, I'm looking forward to high-fiving you as we're in
yeah. My Peloton username is Chaos Panther.
Love that.
So nice. Yeah, we're gonna have to go head to head.
So maybe I won't see you on the leaderboard. You'll be way up the top. I'll be struggling down at the bottom.
I don't know about that. I stick to my power zones. I don't go too crazy.
Same. I do 6-week programs, and once I'm done with that 6 week, I retest and I start another one. It's a mix of either endurance or it's going to be max rides, 120s, 60s, 45s. It's usually 4 to 5 rides a week, and I mix in some weights and some other core stuff in between those. My goal is to be like 98 years old, still be able to bend over, tie my shoe, and go for a walk.
That is a fantastic goal to have, and I think it's a goal we should all have.
Yeah, agreed. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for stopping by the bunker, telling me your
story.
Thank you. Good luck, and I'm sure we'll continue this conversation. I will see you on the leaderboard.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for tuning in to the PR Bunker podcast, where we go beyond the headlines and into the trenches with founders, builders, and operators making real moves. This show is brought to you by the PR Bunker, a strategic communications agency helping mission-driven and impact-focused organizations cut through the noise and tell stories that matter. Want to learn more? Head to prbunker.com and subscribe to The Bunker Briefing, our monthly email newsletter packed with a 45-second read that's stacked with value. We're talking practical PR and communications insights, networking tips, and strategies to help you navigate the moments that matter. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. We've got more raw, real conversations on the way. So stay locked in. Until next time, keep building, stay resilient, and remember, momentum favors the bold.